Joining me now is Douglas Murray, the best-selling author of The War on the West. Douglas, will speak about the Tory leadership battle in a second, but I have to get your thoughts on this incredible story from the UK, where a dance school is scrapping ballet auditions because ballet is apparently an elitist white art form, God forbid. And according to the head of undergraduate studies at this dance school, a Ms. Francesca McCarthy, ballet has strongly gendered roots and was problematic in relation to inclusion of non-binary and trans dancers. Douglas?
Yes. I mean, I'm sure you agree with me, Rita, that if there's one remaining really patriarchal, horribly heterosexual business in the world, it's ballet. And we just got to make sure. We just got to make sure we get those bigots out of the way, you know? I mean, this is a sadly totally normal story in our time, where places which are the least likely places to have any bigotry of any kind, a dance school, say, suddenly self-implodes and self-immolates because it seems to think it's some kind of center of bigotry and prejudice. One of the things that was said by this numbskull, so-called head of this institution, was that racial minorities don't get into ballet. Well, I mean, I don't know what she'd say to a dancer like Carlos Acosta, the great Cuban dancer who led most of the British ballet companies in the last couple of decades. I don't know what she'd say to the many racial and other minority groups who have been performing in ballet perfectly happily for a very long time to great acclaim. So no, this is just another example that this happens in the classical music world, it happens in the theatre world, it happens in the university world, and of course it would happen in the ballet world.
Yes, and it's deliberate. They want to decolonise the curriculum, as they call it, and they go looking for problems that do not exist. Yep. Now, to the Tories, and the bookmakers still have former Chancellor Rishi Sunak as most likely to prevail. He's currently ahead of three women, including one who is heavily backed by the party faithful, if recent polling is any guide, and that's Kemi Badenoch. She is the real deal, Douglas. She speaks so strongly, a real conservative with conservative credentials and values. She is young. Is she any chance of becoming the next British Prime Minister?
She does have a chance. I think that most people's odds are on Rishi Sunak because he's held one of the, the most important parts of the state, the most important roles, as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Now, some of his contenders have been using his role as Chancellor of the Exchequer against him. He did oversee tax hikes, and that is, of course, very unpopular with the Conservative grassroots, as it is with much of the country as a whole. However, he did that, of course, during the COVID era, and so I think he'll be able to sort of get around it that way. The other people he's running against, there are some impressive figures. There's a rather less impressive figure, I think, in Penny Mordaunt, who's talked up her own CV, but seems to be the sort of princess of woke in this particular battle. But Kemi Badenoch is definitely the one to watch. I've known her for some time, admired her stances. She really is a very rare thing in politics of somebody who is not afraid to walk straight into the fire. And she's done that on a lot of things. There is, of course, a question mark over her, which is, she hasn't held any of the major offices of state. Can somebody who's been a relatively junior figure up till now make such a big leap? We'll see. This is all up to the Tory party faithful, and you never know with them. They are quite an unpredictable bunch, the Tory party members who vote for the leader. I've always said that the Tory party in Britain has a reputation for lethal competency, and I always said that that's sort of only half true. They're lethally incompetent most of the time. And that's, of course, why they've given us, among other things, such great figures as John Major and Theresa May.
Now, Douglas, I began the show by talking about why it's important that people say what they feel, don't self-censor. And we've had research released recently showing that as many as 1 in 4 Australians are hiding their views on social issues and politics as a result of cancel culture. This phenomenon is most strong with younger Australians. Almost half are saying that they struggle to be their authentic self for fear of judgment or exclusion. It's not a sign of a healthy society, is it?
No, it's not. It's very worrying, particularly the number of young people who say this, as you've just highlighted, Rita. That's a very worrying thing indeed. You know, a society is not healthy if it basically only allows one set of views and anyone who counters them, you know, feels like they're going to get into trouble and so ends up subduing their views. You know, there was a time, I think in our lifetimes, where, you know, you could sit around a dinner table with people of left and right and you debated things and you discussed things and, you know, many couples, I think we probably have all known in our lifetimes, vote different ways. You know, one will vote left, one will vote right. It doesn't matter. Doesn't mean they love each other any less. But something interesting has happened in the last decade or so, and I think that's what this poll points to, which there's an increasing fragmentation. And it's basically, I mean, there are some people on the right who try to do this to people on the left. You might say in America. But elsewhere, it's basically a left against right thing. It's basically conservatives who fear saying what they think. You know, most left-wingers, I think, in our era are perfectly happy to say what they think. And they're the ones who are doing the casting out. And it's the conservative people who I think in countries like Australia are just sort of piping down. I hope they don't. I hope they won't. As somebody who's always been temperamentally incapable of shutting up, I have a limited amount of sympathy with people who don't say what they think. I just really hope that this, particularly the younger generation, realizes that to live a life in which you don't say honestly what you think is to really live a very thwarted and blighted life. So I'd urge them as soon as possible to get out of that, get better friends, better circles of people around you, more open-minded people. You'll have a lot more fun and you'll get a lot further.
Hear, hear. And finally, you wrote a fascinating column this week asking, shouldn't we feel sorry for Hunter Biden? My immediate answer was no. But you also made a pertinent point there about how the left and right fight differently and how there's a growing number of people on the right who believe that the right's decorum is the reason it loses so many cultural battles. And they're fighting for the right to to be a bit more robust and a bit bolder in how they tackle these important fights. How do you think that's going to go? Right. I mean, is the decorum making the Conservatives lose?
Well, it's a fascinating subject. You see, I say that one of the problems I met, that it's of course slight clickbait. I have to say that the title that was given on that about Hunter Biden. Yeah. You know, my own view is he's a very sorry figure, obviously, but the real scandal about him isn't the endless sex tapes and stuff. The real scandal is sitting on an energy board in a competency he didn't have in a country he didn't know. You know, and my worry with sort of scandals is that they basically cover over the bigger story. The bigger story with Hunter Biden is not the crack. It's not the prostitutes. That's all very sad and terrible. But it's the corruption stuff that I think people should focus on. But yes, you're right. There's also this decorum issue. And as I say, I think that the right have to think hard about this. There are people on the right, particularly in America, who say we've got to hit the left as low and hard and painfully as they hit us. And I say that I understand that instinct. On the other hand, I think people have to remember, and I give a pertinent example in the piece in my own life with a Labour politician, that sometimes the thing that you're going to do is you end up becoming like the person that you dislike. You become your enemy. You know, the old thing, you stare into the abyss long enough and the abyss stares back into you. You know, so I think it's a moral question for Conservatives because sometimes that restraint of not going the full way, not plunging the knife in all the way, is the difference between civility and barbarism.
Oh, that is a topic we could discuss at length. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time this evening.
It's a great pleasure as always, Rita. Thank you.